Shalom, shalom, first and foremost. I'd like to give all praises to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Makakutash, double honors to the elders and the apostles, of Great Millstone. Salutation to Akim pushing this word in sincerity and truth. This is your brother here, Yasad, from Trinidad James Camp. Back at you with another lesson. Will not edify into the spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. And this one here basically is a more or less like a admonition, basically to lift upliftment of the spirit, especially with brothers, because we know a lot of brothers men go through it because being a part of this truth. The scripture even talks of this is the condition of the battle, so you're gonna have a lot of times that, especially when you're serving Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, you have the times when you're up, you have the times when you're down. But be mindful that the times that you're down, you call upon the Lord and be cheerful in it, enjoy it, right? And even when you're up, you ought to give thanks to the Lord. Remember to give charity, always, right? But the more going to the aspect when the Lord bring it to a lower state, you ought to be cheerful, don't be down spirited and none of these things. Keep a positive flow. Allow the scriptures to comfort you. In that time, Sirach 2:1, for my son, if thou come to serve the Lord, prepare thy soul for temptation, because this here is a test unto you. Let me see how you're gonna react, what you're gonna do in your time. You in a lower state. You might have lost your job, but remember, it's all for testing. For the Lord to see if you and trust in Him when you reach that point when you barely have anything. Because the same reaction that you're willing to give now, when Jacob's trouble, when things would be much more difficult, that you're gonna be the reaction you're gonna give forth. Right? The reaction you're gonna give forth, and Jacob's trouble is gonna be way worse. You surely wouldn't know your next meal coming from. So, that is why I go back into trusting the Lord and allowing these scriptures, let it flow in your mind. Let it keep it, stay in the spirit, As the scriptures say, that your meat is to do the will of the Lord, Seek ye the kingdom of heaven, all things can be added, right? That is the next in the Yapa scripture, and I might even tap in and bring out them scriptures, So verses 2 says, set thy heart aright and constantly endure. So you set in your heart goes back to La'ab, which is your mind. So you keep your mind focused. Don't too much meditate ways. I have nothing, I now lost my job, and what I gonna do. The scripture talk about a heavy mind. It was sticking on like a heavy mind. It does even bring a sorrowful, when you're real sorrowful and whatnot, it does make you even sick, or even it can make you die. You always been sorrowful, and be cheerful. You understand? Set your mind right, that this is just for a time period, and testing from the Lord, for the Lord to see what I will do when I am in this situation. And make not haste in the time of trouble. Right? Cleave unto Him and depart not away, that thou mayest be increased at thy last end. Because again, it's a balance. You're gonna have to know what's to be at a lower state. You're gonna have to know what's to be, abound. Right? That's why the scripture say, I know both to be both abound and abase, right? And with these two balances, you're able to stay in the spirit, right? Because what could go on, some men, when they start to play, they start to have it, they start to be, abound. It's like they forget about the Lord. That's why the scripture talk about in Proverbs. I'll bring it after this. Give me that which is sufficient for me. Right? Let's say verses 4. Whatsoever is brought upon thee, take cheerfully, and be patient when thou art changed to a low estate. Right? Yeah, you ought to be patient. Right? You ought to be patient because the Lord ain't gonna allow that to happen forever. Right? The scripture in James, let me get that. James chapter 1. It backs up this clearly. James 1 and verses 2. It's him, my brethren, count it all joy when ye fall into diverse temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. Right? So yeah, you ought to count it joy, because that in itself is a temptation in itself. Right? Sometimes, thoughts may come to your mind and whatnot, but you ought to stay in control, right? And trust that the Lord would provide, the Lord would bring. That's it. And again, it makes it clear, knowing that the trying of your faith will take what? Patience. So you ought to have that patience to endure no matter what, or how rough it gets, because that is the characteristics the elect gonna have, as the scripture mentions that you're being a pilgrim on the face of the earth. Also, when it speaks about wisdom and knowledge, gonna keep you stable in that times. Yeah. Verse 4, but let patience have a perfect work, that ye may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. So we're back to Sirach 2 and verses 5. For gold is tried in the fire, and acceptable men in the furnace of what? Adversity. So that is where it's going back to. Right? And you being tried, you're testing. So how now? Alright, you claim to be a man, serving the Lord and whatnot. And a little testing time come. All the time you was on a high, or you was more or less a bit comfortable, things going your way very nicely and whatnot, and then boom, you reach that low estate. Now you be where you are based for a trial. How you gonna operate? How you gonna be able to function? How you gonna be able to, I would use the word adapt. Right? So let me get here. Proverbs. Right. Proverbs 25. Wait, so no, that's not it. Proverbs 30 and 8. It says, remove far from me vanity and lies. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with food convenient for me. And that is where it is, because when you're in a lower state, the Lord will just be supplying your needs for you, and you now have to remain humble, and be able to cope with it, because hey, the time coming where that's all you're gonna be able to do. It ain't gonna the mirth in the land is gonna cease, You know, um, hey, famine is coming. These time is coming, so you ought to prep your mind and be in that mindset even now. So when these times come, it wouldn't be nothing strange unto you. That is like when these kind of stuff happens, it's like you don't know what to do, you don't know how to function, none of these things. So that is why the Lord now that is the whole thing. Before the great testing, there's minor test, and that's it. So every day, you as the days pass by, as the time pass by, you go from different levels of trials. Yeah. It says 9, lest I be full and deny thee. You start to get too caught up. Business running nice, this, that, plenty women coming in. You start to make time for these other things and less time for the Lord. When you're having plenty, it say, who is the Lord, or lest I be poor, and steal and take the name of my power in vain. Yeah. Yeah, so and we know the scripture talk about gonna see the Lord's servants begging bread. Yeah, come on. Psalm 37:25. I have been young and now I am old, yet have I not seen the righteous forsaken. So wait, things mightn't work out today, things mightn't work out as you would like it tomorrow, but it is soon it's gonna work out. It's in no his seed begging bread. So that is it. You just have to have faith and have what? That patience. The Lord gonna set you in a, so the Lord gonna stabilize you. Just endure it. Right? Just endure it. The scripture talk about look at the generation that old. Did any trust in the Lord and was confounded? No. Right? Let's see. Look at Luke 12:24. Consider the ravens, for they neither sow nor reap, which neither have storehouses nor barn, and Yahweh Ba'ashem shall feed them. So look, for instance, the birds. The Lord ensure that they feed, they eat. How much more are ye better than the fowls? So these things, when just serve Yahweh Ba'ashem Shai, everything gonna be added on after. And which of you taking thought can add to his stature 1 cubit? If ye then be not able to do that thing which is least, why take ye thought for the rest? Consider the lilies, how they grow, they toil not, they spin not, and yet I say unto you that Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. If then so Yahweh Ba'ashem shall so clothe the grass, which is today in the field, and tomorrow is cast into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, O ye little of faith? So that way you ought to have. Right? That's why it goes in verse 29 brings it. It says, and seek not ye what ye shall eat, or what ye shall drink, neither be ye of doubtful mind. Right? For all these things do the nations of the world seek after, and your Father knoweth that ye have need of these things. Right? But rather seek ye the kingdom of heaven, and all things shall be added unto you. So don't stress up yourself too much, about where this is gonna come from. It's gonna come. The Lord already know that you need this, and need these things. So when you get brought to that lower state, hey, just study the Lord and them things will come. That's it. Just keep your focus on the Lord and them stuff, it would come. Right? I'll bring one more to close up because just a quick lesson straight to the point. You know? Yeah, and I'll end off with this in the book of Philippians 4 and 12, which actually it shows the balance that you have in the understanding that, you know, when the Lord, you know, have you abound and when the Lord have you abased, you know. Philippians 4 and 12, I know both how to be abased. So you had the understanding and you know how to cope with being that at dropping to a low level, a lower state. And I know how to abound everywhere and in all things I am instructed, both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Yahweh which strengthens me, and that is the point. Right? Yeah, and that is the point. It's true. You know, you call upon Yahweh Hashem and He's gonna answer you. Just have the patience and He's gonna provide for you. So hopefully this lesson was all was edifying to the elect. You know, double honor to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone. Salutations until the next Shalom.